Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. This is another episode of Newsflash for you. Thank you so much again. On the show, we have the latest on impeachment. It's been a while since we've been able to talk about that. Impeachment is evolving now into a partisan brawl. Taking a look at Trump's latest anti-Semitic remarks. A story about a Trump official who doesn't want poor people to have publicly funded health care, but wants the public to pay for stolen Ivanka Trump jewelry. We'll also give you the latest on 2020. And Ted Cruz literally having the crew members in NBC laughing at him. Those are some of the stories that I want to get to today. And we're also very, very privileged to have on with us to discuss these stories James Stanley. James, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you can hear us all right. Hope you've been doing well so far.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, we're getting into the latest talk about impeachment. It's really heating up. President Trump is refusing to engage, though, and Democrats have concluded they will press ahead anyway, rendering this historic undertaking little more than a foregone conclusion at this point, with obviously the U.S. House of Representatives being under the control of the Democratic Party. And it looks like in all but a matter of a few weeks, Trump will be the, third president ever to get impeached in the House of Representatives. So what do you make of this move here by Nancy Pelosi this past week to come out and take this big step forward on impeachment?
Well, I think that it shows that she feels as if that what the investigation has showed is plenty for her to make a statement and to her to stand her ground that impeachment should be what we should be doing right now in the country. It's kind of funny, though, how she changed from maybe 5 months ago. She was like, no, we're not going to be even talking about that, to now. Today, we're seeing her now pretty adamant about doing this proceeding. I think it's, in some sense, a little bit bold of her because of the fact that she is probably the last person on my list who would have ever, in my opinion, changed her opinion and said, okay, let's start doing this and see what we get from it. And so I think what she did the other day, I think that it's a good move. For me personally, I still think impeachment's I think we're a little bit too late to it, but if she feels as if there's enough evidence that impeachment can go through, then I'm perfectly fine with them having it go through.
Do you think there is a substantial amount of evidence on impeachment at this point, especially at least just with the Ukraine thing and the stuff that they're laying out based on, I don't know how much you've been looking at this spate of hearings that have been going on, but do you think there's enough evidence for it to go through well with the American people?
I think that there is, depending really honestly on your political belief, because if you don't like the Bidens, then maybe not. But overall, I mean, I think that they have a good amount. I mean, I think the problem is, though, it's more of a way that I think what for some reason, a lot of the Republicans are hinting at, it's more of the way as which you read the transcript. And if you read it in a way that if you look at Trump's wording and you read it in a negative way, which it is, then it could be a movement for impeachment. I mean, because he did ask for them to investigate one of his possible political opponents in this 2020 race. And then, he even pushed and said that China should even do it. So, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things going on. I think that he wants an investigation to go on in these countries so that a lot of political dirt can come out of it, so that then he could throw a lot of dirt at Biden. Because honestly, any of the Democrats, at least only three of them off the top of my head, I could say, could in fact beat Trump. And Trump has no sort of dirt that he could throw at three of them that is actually going to be feasible and truthful. Now, he can, throw names and name people like he did in 2016. But honestly, I think 2020 is going to be a different year. And I think overall, I think this impeachment proceeding definitely does have a lot of evidence, as much as other presidents. I think that it really depends on how you look at the transcript. I think that's what I would have to say.
So, yeah, you're saying here that a lot of this does hinge on this transcript of the call between Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky asking for an investigation of Biden. It looks like, again, Trump's lawyers, they're taking a big risk here to not participate, not make their voices heard in this process. How do you think that plays? Because we've heard a lot in the media how much they've been kind of complaining and putting their media allies have come out and said, well, the Democrats aren't giving us a vehicle to voice our protesting here. What do you make of that claim here in general? Like, how true is it that the Democrats have been trying to shut the Republicans out? Because based on what I've seen, like all the Republicans who would normally be invited to any kind of hearings that are appropriate to their committee assignments, they were invited. No special efforts were made to keep people out. So, how would you evaluate that kind of claim there from the Republicans? The Democrats have been keeping them out of this process.
I don't really believe it because they've had a lot of interesting questions they've been asking the people who have been brought up to testify in front of Congress during the impeachment proceedings. I think that it's all. I think they're trying to make themselves look like victims in front of the American people, so that people then go out and against the whole entire impeachment thing. Republicans have their time. Now, for some of the backdoor meetings that are supposedly closed off from Republicans, then I think that could be a little bit iffy. But I think it also, again, really matters on the sources, because if you're getting the sources from a Republican, oh, look, these backdoor meetings aren't being fair for Republicans, well, maybe the backdoor meetings weren't for you in particular. Like, for example, Matt Gaetz went out of his way to have, I think it was like 20 plus members of the House Judiciary Committee, like, just walk in on a private meeting. According to him, they were training the witnesses to kind of say things that would be pro-Democrat, anti-Republican, and anti-Trump, which, I mean, that's completely a lie, as we can already know. But I think that they were pretty involved in the process. I think that they're just very adamant, and they are very, what do you call it? Maybe like they have a tight connection with Trump. And I think that the reason why is because they're the only reason why they won in their congressional districts. And they kind of look at him as a power, a really big power in the party, which, look, he is. I mean, look, at 90% of the Republican Party likes Trump. So the fact of the matter is, if you're going to go against him, then that may be a death note for yourself in Congress in the future as well. So I think that's really kind of more of the problem. I think they're having a lot of time, though, in the proceedings. Yes, I do. I think that they just make it seem like they're not, to try to play the victim card like Trump is.
Yeah, that victim card can be really effective, because what they would really do, I think, is kind of turn to their media allies and get the message out that, at least to their voters, because we really do, at least politically, live kind of in two different Americas, where two different sets of people who are politically active receive two different sets of information. And that's, I think, that's just kind of a reality thing, and that's why the poll numbers have, at least on impeachment, have, and Trump in general, have stayed so rock solid, because there's a strong group of people who really hate the president, and there's a strong group of people who really like him. And what I think is, it's going to be very, very hard either way to switch that. And then there's obviously a whole bunch of people kind of who just don't really care that much about politics, which I think is interesting to kind of consider there as well. But looking to what's ahead, a hearing is planned with the Judiciary Committee, in the Judiciary Committee, where Democratic lawyers plan to present the case for impeaching Trump while the White House sits out the process. This is probably going to set in motion a series of actions likely to produce official charges against the president by the week's end, and a nearly party-line vote in the full House before Christmas to impeach him. So that's going to happen very, very soon. It's an indication of, in a deeply polarized nation where party rules above all else, a process enshrined in the Constitution as the most consequential way to address the president's wrongdoing has devolved into another raucous partisan brawl. So does that worry you about some of the partisanship that's been taking place in this impeachment process, or is it just kind of part of life at this point, and it's never going to do much to change the outcome?
Well, I think partisanship does have quite a lot of an influence, and I think the reason why it does is more per se because I think that a lot of the partisanship that we have right now in the Congress and in the U.S. is mostly based off kind of looking good for the people in power. And I think, like, looking back at how Matt Gaetz was behaving there, he was just trying to look good for Trump so that Trump would give him a retweet or do something like that, or come down to his congressional district in 2020, which will be a good race to watch, actually, by the way, because they have a pretty good Democrat running down there. But getting back onto hand, the problem that partisanship brings into an investigation like this is you kind of look away from the facts and you kind of look more
Hmm.
towards like what Nancy Pelosi has been always saying, like put your country over your party. Problem with partisanship is that you put your party and your interest of the leaders of your party first so that you can look good for them and get, in some sense, the prize. And the prize for them is, having a good standing with Trump, which in the party seems pretty good. But I think that partisanship definitely does have a pretty bad effect in a major investigation, any sort of investigation, because you kind of look away from the facts that are damaging for the person who they're investigating if they're on your side. But the funny thing enough is, I was thinking about today after I was thinking about this, is I wonder how the Republicans would act if Hillary Clinton was president and they went through with impeachment. I wonder if they would have been um, saying any of these things that, oh, by the way, the transcript doesn't say, like, if Hillary Clinton did the same exact thing, okay, say Trump was going to run again in 2020 if he lost in 2016, I wonder what the Republicans would have done if Hillary Clinton picked up the phone, called Ukraine, and said, can you please investigate? Instead of them saying now, oh, he wasn't asking for an investigation, he was just asking to make sure everything was okay, not an investigation to get political dirt. If Hillary Clinton did that, I can guarantee you 100% they would be, calling Hillary Clinton many names and
Oh
probably would be
yeah.
trying to get her impeached over that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be that's a really clear and interesting point. The comparing and contrasting ability that we're going to be able to have when it comes to looking at how Republicans and Democrats would have handled this, and just kind of using our imaginations if things have been on the other side, and of course, especially with the suppression of like the opposition, I think would have been a lot worse under a Republican administration because like these people who are currently executing this are far from the most outrageous Democrats that are currently in power. I think it's fair to say. But um, yeah, so Columbia University law professor in the New York Times, Philip Bobbitt, says that is its tragedy. The framers of the Constitution uh, were careful to design a process for removing a president from office they hoped would rise above the nation's petty political squabbles. They did everything possible to prevent that from happening, and we are plunging headlong into it. And I mean, again, I don't think that's a thing that you really can prevent because it's going to be like impeachment parties in a democracy. They're bound to happen because they're always going to be collections of different interests and believing different things in coalitions and stuff like that. So it's always going to happen. Um, and that is something that it's really hard to avoid, and it's kind of, in my opinion, a little kind of crazy to say that oh, they did everything within their power to try and prevent it, but it's, and I think it's just like the kind of reliance on like what the framers would have wanted is just a little bit crazy at this point. It's not really relevant to, I think, currently understanding this political moment, but it's very kind of convenient to just gripe and like complain about, oh, the founding fathers would be so disappointed with us now. Like, I don't really care. I don't really care. I'm just gonna be completely honest.
Yeah, I don't really blame you, to be honest with you either.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough, and really, Democrats have really tried very, very hard to let Trump and the Republican allies in Congress derail their efforts with legal delays or time consuming diversions. Democrats have decided it is not worth waiting for cooperation, but they're all but certainly not to receive as they press forward to charge the president with high crimes and misdemeanors. Democrats argue that they have gone out of their way to treat Trump fairly, but have been refused at every turn. And it's hard to, like, you got your opportunity to kind of come in and represent yourself, and it's really not going very well for you. You're just refusing it. You're just refusing it. So there's only so much I think really the Democrats can do at this point. And if you're just, I think, just think otherwise, just kind of just ignoring some certain facts that don't really go your way if you're looking at the situation here. So yeah, before we move on, I just want to get your take on like what's next here. Where do we see this impeachment inquiry going?
Well, I see it. I see the impeachment occurring, definitely getting drafted up this week, as Nancy Pelosi had already ordered that. Look, I see the House passing the impeachment, but I mean, it's pretty obvious right now. It's going to get gridlocked and barred in the Senate. But funny enough, I don't know if it was an advertisement or something I was reading.